Hi guys and welcome back. So this video has taken a bit longer to make than I thought it would and has become much bigger than I thought it would be. So apologies for the length of the video, but there's so much to get through and I probably will forget some things. So feel free to leave a comment if there's anything I left out that you want me to include. For example, things like how to update the firmware on the Flysky Noble NB4. That is probably a video on its own, but let's stick to the main event here. So the reason why I had both these transmitters originally was so I could use them with my new ma030 Evo all-wheel drive, the white Audi there. I've run the ma030 with the KT18, which had all sorts of issues, although most of them resolved now with the ICS lead, as you can see in previous videos. After speaking to other people on the ma030 World community Facebook groups, everyone recommended two main transmitters came up. One was the EX-6 and the other was the NB4. Now it took a while for me to actually get a chip for the Flysky for the ma030, and that's because you can't get it in the United Kingdom yet. I imported mine from Japan and it arrived on, I think, Thursday or Friday. So I've had a whole weekend of racing with the guys in the garage, which is great. And well, wife's been away, so I've had the whole house to myself. So that's all we've done: race ma030s and AMZs and BZ3 and all those things. So I've had a good time with both transmitters to give you an idea of what I think. First thing to mention is the only two cars I had to run with the EX6 was the ma030 and the new all-wheel drive and an old ma030 ASF, which has been heavily modded, which is the red Ferrari Enzo behind the transmitter there. So it's difficult to give a full comparison. I have just received a receiver chip from Banggood, which is compatible with the MHS and ASF EX6, which I intend to install in one of my other cars, either an AMZ or my SZ or the BZ3, so then I can give a more fair comparison of what other things this transmitter can do. Let's crack on. So first of all, I'll start with the Flysky because that's the one that everyone's excited to see, more so than the EX6. Now, I gave a quick overview of this last time, but it is a beautiful transmitter. It talks to you. It's got a built-in LiPo on the base that you can take off. It's got a LiPo in the handle and it's got a touch screen, and it just looks beautiful. In terms of practicality, I did not charge the Flysky at all yesterday, and we raced from morning till, I think it must have been midnight, and it managed to last the whole day. And it was being used constantly from one car to another. So the battery life is spectacular and it is not difficult to live with. The touchscreen itself is self-explanatory. I'll try and position this so you can see. The menus are pretty concise and straightforward. You can select models. So I've got my Evo there. That's for my AMZ F360, and that's my 911 GT3, which is also an AMZ. Those are the only three models I've got programmed in at the moment. So with this transmitter, I got two mini receivers, which are in the two cars on top of the boxes, and I will show you those in a moment. But the main car we wanted to use this with was the ma030. So my chip arrived, I installed it. I was really excited to use my new transmitter and tried to pair it, and it wouldn't pair. And this is where I read the instructions again for the receiver, and it mentioned that I have to go onto the Flysky website and do a system update, a firmware update. So to do that, there is an option here to firmware update, but first you have to download it to a laptop, a Windows PC or something like that. Don't use the Windows Explorer, whatever that's called, because for some reason it wouldn't allow me to actually run the update software, but Google Chrome did. Had no issues with Google Chrome. So you run the software, press update and install the latest version. And the reason for this is because the Mini Z Evo, if I go to frequency set, I'll be able to show you this easier. Where is this now? Bear with me, guys. Okay, frequency, radio frequency setup. And here it says AFHDS3 two-way. Now that's for the receivers that I've got in the two AMZs on the boxes. But if you go in here, you see that actually an option for the Mini Z Evo. If you haven't updated the firmware for this, that option will not be on there, and you will not be able to use it with your Evo, even if you've got the receiver's chip installed. You have to update the firmware. So that kind of put a damper on things as I tried to get that done. To be fair, it was nothing to do with Flysky, it was more to do with my laptop. Once I used Google Chrome, everything was pretty quick and easy, and it updated. Once it updated, the binding process was pretty straightforward. All I had to do was select the Evo option, and then go to bind with the receiver, and then it starts to bind. Obviously, I'm not going to do that now. But you do have to first select the Evo in the actual system under the frequency. Once it's done and you've saved the model, then it's really easy. When you change from one to the other, it automatically just changes it for you. So if I go to this one now, it will switch it for me and I'll be able to use it with the car. So I don't need to mess around in any of the menus. It's switched automatically. The transmitter at the moment, I've turned off a lot of the voice commands and alarms, but it will tell you when the battery's low in your receiver. So that's great when your car's about to run out of battery. It actually warns you right beforehand that the receiver voltage is low, which is brilliant. In terms of adjustability for the Mini Z, the main thing that you'll really appreciate is that if you've got a gyro installed like I have, you can actually set up one of the buttons to actually use for the steering gyro gain. And what I've done is I've set it up on this side button here, and if I turn it, you can see, now I might actually enable the sounds, because in this instance it might just give you a better idea of what the model's about. Let's just go into the system, go into sound, and turn back on system sound. There we go. Okay, so if we go back to the main menu here, so if you read at the top, it says Flysky 01 Evo. I couldn't be bothered to delete Flysky 01, I just wrote Evo, but you can completely name it as you want. Shall we do that now? Shall I show you how it's done? Might as well. Let's do this now. Okay, let's go to model. So Flysky Evo, I'll put the cursor, come on. Okay. There you go, Mini Z Evo. So now at the top it says Mini Z Evo. Okay, I'm trying to keep this in focus, guys, bear with me. Right, so when you're in the main menu, if you want to reduce or increase the gyro, simply assign the button, which I'll show you how to do. And you can turn the gyro up or down. Now, I have got the second dial below it also set for the throttle gyro, which I don't really use. Actually, I've turned it off. But that's so you can actually have the gyro deaden the throttle as well. Okay, so other things you can do with the Mini Z, obviously you've got your steering dual rate, which you can turn down from here. Your EXP, which you can adjust from here and change your curve, how the steering responds, and you can turn that off or you can turn it on. You can also reset the values, which is great if you've forgotten what you've done and want to go back to default. It's very easy. Again, for the throttle, you've got your forward rate for the actual, okay guys, bear with me on this, I can remember how this works. Okay, so that decreases the maximum the throttle goes to, so you can decrease your maximum there. As you can see, the graph line is dropping, so that's throttle F. If you go to throttle EXP, so that's the rate for the throttle. EXP turns the changes the curve of the, there we go. which you can't see on there for some reason. Okay, let's just reset that. Oh, there we go. Sorry, that's my bad. As you can see, you have to have the tick on so you can see that. I'm still new to this transmitter and it does take me a while to get the hang of these things. So it's probably good for you to see the little mistakes I'm making. So when you're operating this, you won't look as silly as me to your friends. Okay, there we go. So that changes your throttle curve for the forward direction. So obviously here now you've got a much more aggressive throttle response. And then that one, if you increase, that will increase the maximum. There you go. And then this is for the reverse, the brake. And you've got rate for the brake and the EXP for the brake, which I've got here to be quite harsh at the moment. So it comes on quite strongly with maximum brake. Okay. So again, most of the things on here are very easy to use, as you can see. And there's more menus further along. Some of these aren't relevant to the Mini Z. But most of the things on here are very useful and very easy to use, and you can use on the fly while you're actually racing the car. You know, between races you can stop, make little adjustments, and you'll get a lot out of the transmitter. So overall, the actual functionality and use of this transmitter is brilliant. If you want a really detailed review on this transmitter, I'd go over to Beaver's hobby channel. He did a really good review on this. I might leave a link to his review in the description because he breaks it down even further. But overall, I'll go on about how it was racing for the day with this. So with the Mini Z, I found it to be way better than the KT18. Obviously the car responded really well. I had no complaints really. If anything, I found it very easy to get the most out of the car using this transmitter. Also, because we were racing between cars and I was using this on other cars, it made it very useful because switching it was so easy. Just to go to the model, change over to say the F360. I'll take the shell off that just so you can see. So that's, there you go. You're ready to use the next model. And again, I've got that set up as well with a channel 3 set for the gyro. And there you see at the top it says F360. So I'll just show you the receiver that actually comes with the car. Again, if you go over to Beaver's hobby channel, he's got a really good breakdown of the receivers and the speed that transmitter works at. Now I'm just going to take the shell off this. So this is an AMZ 94mm, and here you can see the 4-channel receiver that comes with this Flysky. So I've got 2 of those, and you can see it fits in just about. Now ignore my 3D printing there, that's for a Vox servo which isn't designed for this Mini Z, sorry, AMZ, but really does improve the steering as it happens. As you can see, it fits in quite neatly, and this is quite a low shell. So if you're worried about fitting these in, they will fit in, and especially with the actual plugs being horizontal, it does make it even easier. And you can see I've managed to pack quite a lot into this 94mm. I've got a gyro there. There's the speed control, and there's a transponder that we use with the Easy Lap system. Again, switching over to use this car is probably where I really learned so much more about how good this transmitter is. It was brilliant all round. I mean, using it with the AMZ, I got that much more out of the car, the handling, the responsiveness. So not just the Mini Z, but the other cars I use it with. And this is where, so far, I found this transmitter to be really good. It's just brilliant as an all-round transmitter. So if you're using more than one car, not just the Mini Z, but you've got other cars. And certainly, I don't know how it works with larger scale cars. I have got a large scale Tamiya that I haven't used for a while, so I might pop a receiver for that in and see how it handles with that. But on the whole, pretty good. So I used it for both these cars and the Mini Z there, and the responsiveness, the power delivery, everything was pretty smooth. The control of the gyro, very easy. And I will put some footage of us racing these cars so you can see them in action. In terms of, you know, what this transmitter costs, I think I spent about £140 from Hobby King, and getting the 2 receivers with it for the other 2 cars was worthwhile. Just for those alone, I would get this transmitter because it has been brilliant to use, and even powers itself down. If you leave it on, it beeps away. You can turn the alarm off, but then it will just power itself down. So if you forget to turn it off, it switches itself off. It is actually pretty neat, and the ergonomics of it are not bad. It has got a movable steering wheel that you can move to the side to make it left and right handed. There's so many buttons on here for so many different things. I think for what you're paying, you're getting a fantastic transmitter. It is very good. Is it of a superior level for top end racing? I don't know, but for what I do, it's brilliant. For your average racer, absolutely brilliant. Will do more than enough. Let's turn this off. Now, interestingly, I did not actually have to charge the base separately yesterday. I just left it on and I let the thing run out, and by the end of the day, it was only just when... Actually, didn't actually put the warning sign up until the next day when I turned it on to say the battery was low. But at any point, I could have taken the base off and put it on charge and carried on using the transmitter without the base because there's a battery in here. And then once that was charged, pop it back on. So very versatile. How did it change the handling of the Mini Z? That's what everybody wants to know, really. I mean, after having trouble with the other transmitter, yes, it was far superior. This car is pretty easy to handle. I have done one modification to it for race day, and that is I have put a AMZ differential in the back, which I can adjust a ball diff. The standard diff was very loose, and I found that the straight line power delivery was lacking coming out of a corner. It was stuttering a little bit, but with this ball diff from one of the AMZs, it's absolutely perfect. So yeah, in terms of what you can do, in terms of braking, in terms of acceleration, this transmitter, you can do all from the transmitter. Probably the only thing I had to use the ICS lead for is for any passive braking. Otherwise, in fact, I knew I'd forget something. One of the things that did bug me, which I did realise after a while, on a lot of the models, the default is on. So if I go to, for example, the ABS function, I've turned it off here. You can see that the red circle with the line through it is on, and I've set the values to 0. And that's because for a lot of them, the ABS is already on. So when you're driving the car, you might find it's not as smooth in the corners if the ABS is kicking in, especially for us when we're drifting around corners on our track. So I had to work out why that was, then go in and turn the ABS off. Now, that might be obvious to a lot of you, but it wasn't to me. I assumed it'd be off from the start, but it wasn't. It was on. So that's one thing to look out for. But obviously, if you want to use the ABS, brilliant. You can set it up. Okay, so... let's turn that off again. Shutting down, lovely. Brilliant. Yeah, so I really liked it, and I found it to be very, very easy to use, and the car responded well. I think there's not much else really to say with that. I mean, if you want to go into detail about how each operation works on the transmitter, you can look at the manual, you can download it off the Flysky website. But I like the transmitter a lot, and I used it a lot with the other two cars as well. In terms of is it worth getting it for the Mini Z, I think if you're a Mini Z enthusiast and that's the only cars you have, then it's not going to be as much use to you, because the only car you can use it is with the Evos that have the receiver chip. So that limits, how many different types of cars you can use it for. That said, if you were to make that decision based on what's best for this particular Mini Z, then it becomes a bit of a grey area. So I'll move on to the EX-6 next. So you've seen me using the Noble Flysky. I'm now going to change the receiver chip over so we can use the EX-6. So you unclick the top cover, slide it off, and pop off. Now you can actually push it down and it will click off on one side and the other. Now you have to be careful with this thing. I'm always worried about damaging it, but it is relatively easy to lift off. Okay, that's the Flysky NB4. So these chips now on the back of them, I don't know if you can see that, they have like a little plastic clip bit. If that isn't pushed down properly, you'll think your receiver's connected and it's not, and then you'll have difficulty pairing. Now I'll try and see if I can get the sound when you actually put it down properly and what it should make. Did you hear that? Okay, that clicks in correctly when you do that and it will pair properly. If you just push it down and put the lid on, it won't work. And no matter how many times you try and pair your transmitter, you'll think there's something wrong with the pairing process. And all it is, your receiver isn't plugged in correctly. How do I know this? Because with my KT18, I spent ages trying to pair it before I figured that out. And I thought I'd clicked it in. It felt like it clicked it in, but you really have to get that positive click to make sure. Okay, good. So if we turn on the transmitter, and then turn on the car, and select the correct model, which I shall do. Oh. It says it's on a different model. Yeah, it's connected. So let's just go into function, go into model, go into the correct model. Although I think because this is, that's the correct one, model 10. Okay, so we are now paired with the EX-6. That was odd. It seemed to be working even though it was on the wrong model. But I think why that is I'd switched it from ASF mode to MHS mode. And the car that's paired to it doesn't work in MHS mode, but this one does. So for the time being, that's the only answer I can give for that. Okay, so the car is now paired. We'll go do a test drive. So midway through my test of transmitters, I started to have an issue where the motor wouldn't work. And I thought it was a transmitter at first. And what I'm trying to show you here with is that one of the wires have come and soldered for the motor to the speedo. Can you see that? Now, I have not moved or touched that part of the car at all. It's generally left alone. So I'm a little bit annoyed with this, even though I love this car. That's not on. That is not on. Sorry, I'm completely missing the camera. So I'm going to have to take the cover off and resolder that wire. Not what I expect to have to do today. I hate soldering, but here we go. This transmitter, it has got AA batteries at the moment, but you can get a pack so that you can run it with a LiPo or rechargeable pack. If I can get this out, okay, there you go. So it's very similar to the regular Kyosho transmitters like the KT18 and the KT19. That said, though, the power consumption is pretty reasonable. Okay, there we go, I'm struggling with that. In terms of the menus, this transmitter is much more clunky and the functions aren't as straightforward to find. Although if you've used one of these before, I'm sure you'll say it's very easy. But you can see it's very basic. But the functions in terms of what it can do for the car is pretty much the same. I think the only difference I'd really point out straight away is that for the gyro, you can preset one of the switches for the gyro. There we go, it's not that one, it's... Okay, I'm on the wrong model. So at the moment I'm on the Enzo. Let's come out of that, let's change the model. Enter model, enter, there we go, all drive MHS. Okay, let's come out of that. So now when I hit this button, you can see it brings up a menu and it gives you a set gyro positions. So whenever I turn the system off and then on again, it always starts off with 0 gyro. And then by clicking it once, it puts it on 25%, twice onto 50, 3 times onto 75, and then one more time onto 100. Now, the only issue with that is you have to assign those values yourself, and those are the set values, whereas on the Flysky, you've got a dial, and you can choose, how sensitive you want the gyro to be and set it to that. It's not a big deal, but I do like having that adjustability. That said, the advantage of this is that you can turn it up and down very easy to preset values without even having to think about what you're doing. Just click it and it's done. Okay, now one of the main features of this that the Flysky hasn't got is something that a little bit controversial, but if I go into the steering one here, see there's an option that says feel. Now it's difficult for me to actually demonstrate this, but these values here, what we did was we set them, you can set them to, the maximum is 50 for the steering and for the forward throttle or the brake, and you can set it to -50. So what I did was I set it to +50 for both, and then ran the Mini Z all-wheel drive, and then set it to +50 for both, and then ran it again. And what it really does, it kind of firms up the steering and the trigger. So there must be some kind of a spring adjustment or a motorized adjustment in there, or feedback magnetic, something like that. And it just makes it feel a bit firmer in your hand. So when you're pulling the throttle, it's not completely dead. You feel a bit of resistance. Now, some of you may say, I've tried this and I can't feel a thing. Well, I definitely could. I could feel a difference. And it did make the Mini Z feel like you were driving it more. You got more feeling out of it. Now, ergonomically, this handle, I think, is probably nicer than the Flysky's, and there's more adjustability in the trigger. You can adjust the trigger position. You can change the actual, how far forward the trigger is. I should probably move it forward for me, and you can move the steering wheel down if you want to as well. You have to buy an optional steering wheel for that, but it's got a lot of ergonomic features that are very good, and that feel does make the Mini Z a bit more controllable. Not that it's uncontrollable, it's a very easy to control car. So the usefulness of that is debatable. One of the things that I did appreciate about this is that when I used it with my ma030, so if I take the shell off this just so you can have a look inside, this is quite heavily modded. It's not brushless, but it is very fast. And prior to using this with the KT18, it had that annoying reverse delay on it where you have to wait 5 seconds before you can hit reverse, which basically made me not want to use the car. But with the okay, bear with me a second. Yeah, that shock absorber just come out. Right, I don't want to leave it like that. I can't help myself, guys. Just bear with me a second. There we go. Okay, sorry about that, getting sidetracked. Can't bear for it not to look nice when it's on the shelf, so even though it's missing a wing mirror, I love this car. Okay, so using the EX-6 with that older Mini Z, because it's an ASF, I can change the mode on this to ASF, and it transformed that car. I could suddenly, turn the reverse delay off and turn the braking up, turn the steering angles up, and these are all things I couldn't do as much with the KT18. And you can't, trying to use the trying to find the lead I've got, the ICS lead, wouldn't actually work to reprogram that for some reason, even though I use the old software, but the transmitter sorted it. So yeah, it's great for an old Mini Z. So if you've got any Mini Zs that are ASF and you want to run them, you can. And it opens up the options if you want to get the older version of this, which is I think the ma030 VE Pro all-wheel drive. That you can run with this transmitter and you're going to get the most out of it. So it depends on if all your cars are Mini Zs. If you've got a lot of Mini Zs, especially if they're the ASFs, this is where it gets complicated, guys. I actually had to download a chart off the Kyosho website. I couldn't make head nor tails of which transmitter you can use with which cars, but I'll put it in the description because it really helped me to work it out. I didn't even realize I could use the EX-6 with the receiver chip I got for the KT18. I thought it was incompatible, but after looking at this chart and ticking off all the boxes, I realized you could. So yeah, if you've got other Mini Zs, this is a very nice controller. Now, one thing worth mentioning is that I got this off eBay for about, I think, £200, and it's in really good condition. It had everything with it, the software disc, the lot. This cost me £140 brand new with 2 receivers. So, in terms of price, I think a brand new one of these is maybe £300 or £400, and I do question whether that's worth it. Okay, the difference in controllability is very personal, and although I thought it was better, I didn't think it was that much better that I would spend that much more money on it. Now, if I had 5 or 6 Mini Zs which I wanted to control with this transmitter, then yes, because this Flysky would be of no use to me. So overall, how the car handled, I still would go for the Flysky, even though this is marginally better. I wouldn't say it's, there's a huge difference. It was marginally better, nicer control, nicer feel. You may not even be able to tell the difference. That's my take on it. In terms of the battery life, again, 4 AAs, it wasn't bad at all. We didn't have that much bother with the EX-6. It seemed to be pretty good. The menus, I can't stand, I'll be honest with you. I really found them clunky. It does feel a bit more bulky in your hand. But apart from that, it's not a bad transmitter. So my personal take, because I've got other cars, I am a big fan of this NB4. It's brilliant. In terms of how it binds, the operation, the buttons, the amount of buttons, the built-in timer for the laps, which I didn't show you, but if you go to, again, look over at Beaver's hobby channel, he goes into detail on every single function. For me, it did what I needed to do. So it operates the Mini Z for me great, and my other cars. Battery lasts stages, menu's really easy to use. I don't think I could want much more in a transmitter. EX-6, it's great if you have lots of Mini Zs. It is that little bit better. It depends on your level of racing. We only race in my garage for fun, so I don't think I could justify it. That said, I am looking forward to trying out these little receivers that you can get off Banggood for it. And I'm looking forward to wiring that into one of my cars and seeing how much difference it makes, and then I can compare on something like an AMZ or a BZ3 and what the difference is. But yes, there is a small difference in the handling, but not enough that I would spend the extra money for this one. So I do like it, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't advise someone to spend all that money unless they had lots of Mini Zs already, or they intend to get Mini Zs. If that's going to be just your thing, then I can see why that would be worthwhile. Now, I know you can get a different receiver chip for the ma030, which will enable you to use the Kyosho Synchro Touch, which you can use that with the ma030s at the moment, MR03s, and they're the rear-wheel drive Mini Zs are out at the moment, and you can also use that with the ma02 all-wheel drives, and I think with the front-wheel drives as well. So that might be a better option because it's got the touchscreen. It's a very nice transmitter. I don't think I'll be getting one of those. There's no point because I haven't got any of the Mini Zs that I'll be compatible with at the moment. So as far as I can see, that's the way I would go. I'd probably go with the Flysky. It's my preferred choice. Okay, I'll leave you with